Not every call is meant to be answered, especially at midnight. Tom sat in his living room, nursing a glass of whiskey. At 42, life had become routine, a bit too routine. He lived alone in a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood. His evenings were the same. Come home from work, watch some TV, maybe browse his phone before calling it a night. It was a Friday night, and the rain outside drummed lightly on the windows. The apartment felt especially quiet, almost suffocating. Tom glanced at the clock, 11:58 p.m. He leaned back into the couch, letting the soft hum of the TV lull him into a daze. And that's when his phone rang. Visual, the dimly lit living room, the screen of Tom's phone glowing on the coffee table. Tom frowned. Who would be calling this late? He checked the screen. It was a blocked number. He hesitated but answered anyway. Hello? For a moment, there was only silence. Then faintly, he heard a woman's voice. Tom? His heart skipped a beat. The voice was familiar, painfully familiar. It sounded like Jenny, his ex-girlfriend from over a decade ago. They hadn't spoken in years, not since she left without a trace. But the way she said his name was unmistakable. Jenny? Tom whispered, gripping the phone tighter. Is that you? There was no response, only the soft hiss of static. Then, just as he was about to hang up, she spoke again. Help me, Tom, please. It's so dark. Visual. Tom pacing his living room, the rain outside intensifying. Tom's mind raced. Why was Jenny calling him now, after all these years? And what did she mean by help? He tried calling the number back, but the line was blocked. No history of the call appeared on his phone. He sat down, trying to convince himself that it had to be some sort of prank, or maybe he'd had too much whiskey. But something about the voice, the way it trembled, felt real. Tom knew he should go to bed, but the sound of her voice echoed in his mind. Help me, Tom, it's so dark. The words clung to him, filling him with a sense of dread he couldn't shake. He sat on the couch, waiting, almost hoping for the phone to ring again. Visual, a flashback of Tom and Jenny, years earlier, laughing together at a park. Jenny had been the love of his life, until she wasn't. One day, she just disappeared. No goodbye, no explanation. He searched for her for months, even filed a missing persons report. But eventually he had to move on, or at least he tried to. Now, years later, the sound of her voice had cracked open wounds he thought had healed. He needed answers, and the thought of Jenny being in danger gnawed at him. He tried searching her name online. No updates, no news. It was as if she never existed. Visual, the rain outside turns into a storm, thunder rumbling in the distance. At 12:45 a.m. his phone rang again, the same blocked number. Tom answered immediately. Jenny? What's going on? Where are you? The voice on the other end was softer now, more desperate. Tom, I'm trapped. It's so dark. Please, come find me. His heart pounded in his chest. Where? Where are you, Jenny? She didn't answer directly. Instead, her voice cracked with fear. The old place, Tom. Please hurry. The old place. Tom knew exactly where she meant. The cabin in the woods. It was where they used to go during the early days of their relationship, a secluded getaway where they could escape the world. But he hadn't been there in over 10 years. Jenny, are you hurt? What's going on? He asked again, but the line went dead. Visual, Tom driving through the dark, rain-soaked streets. The clock on the dashboard reads 1:15 a.m. Against all logic, Tom grabbed his keys, threw on a jacket, and got in his car. Something inside him told him that he had to go. What if Jenny was really in danger? What if she had been trapped all this time? The storm worsened as he drove through the winding back roads toward the cabin. The trees along the road bent under the force of the wind, and visibility was almost zero. But Tom pressed on, the sound of Jenny's voice haunting him. Help me, Tom. Please. After nearly an hour of driving, he reached the dirt path leading to the cabin. He hadn't been there in so long, but the place looked exactly as he remembered, except now it felt wrong. Visual. The headlights illuminate the dark, abandoned cabin. The windows are cracked, and the front door hangs slightly ajar. Tom stepped out of the car, flashlight in hand, and approached the cabin. His heart raced as he pushed the door open, the hinges groaning in protest. Jenny? He called, his voice barely audible over the storm. Inside, the cabin was cold and damp, smelling of rot and abandonment. Cobwebs clung to the walls, and the furniture was covered in dust. It was clear no one had been there in years. But Tom felt it, a presence. He shined the flashlight across the room, and that's when he saw it. Jenny's locket. He picked it up, his hands trembling. It was the same silver locket he had given her all those years ago, the one she always wore. But how had it ended up here? Visual. Tom searches the cabin, calling out Jenny's name, but all he finds is silence. Then, the whispers began. Soft, barely audible. Tom. He spun around, shining the flashlight toward the source of the sound, but there was no one there. The wind howled through the cracks in the walls, and the rain pounded against the roof. Then, from the far corner of the room, he heard it. A knock. Tom's heart sank. He slowly approached the door that led to the basement, the sound of knocking growing louder with each step. Visual. Tom opens the basement door, revealing a steep staircase leading into darkness. He hesitated for only a moment before descending into the basement, the flashlight flickering with every step. At the bottom, he found a single chair, and in the chair sat a phone. Tom picked it up, confused, and the screen suddenly lit up. An incoming call from the blocked number. With trembling hands, he answered. Jenny? The voice on the other end was no longer desperate. It was cold, emotionless. You shouldn't have come, Tom. Before he could respond, the basement door slammed shut behind him. The flashlight died, plunging him into complete darkness. Visual. Tom stumbles through the pitch-black basement, trying to find a way out. The whispers grew louder, swirling around him like a storm. And then it hit him. Jenny had never called. Something had lured him here. Something that had been waiting. In the darkness, Tom heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming closer. He backed into a corner, his breath shallow, as the whispers became unbearable. And then he felt it. A hand on his shoulder. The screen cuts to black. Visual. Rain continues to pour outside the cabin. Tom's car sits abandoned, headlights flickering as the storm rages on. Tom was never seen again. His phone was found inside the cabin, the last call still marked as unanswered. And those who visit the old place say that if you listen closely, you can still hear it. The phone ringing, waiting for someone to answer.